Let's talk about truth, the kind that stings at first but heals in the end. There is a massive, life-altering difference between someone making a mistake and someone making a decision. A mistake is rooted in poor judgment, lack of awareness, or an emotional blind spot. It's what we do when we're human, messy, and still growing. A mistake says, I didn't know better in that moment, but I wish I had. But a decision, that's different. A decision says, I knew this would hurt you, and I did it anyway. A decision is calculated, it's measured. Sometimes it's even wrapped in charm or dressed up in good intentions. But no matter how it looks on the outside, when someone chooses to cross a line that they know matters to you, it's not a mistake, it's betrayal. And when you try to treat a decision like it was a mistake, you end up betraying yourself. You rationalize their behavior, you downplay your pain. You tell yourself, maybe I'm overreacting. Even when your gut is screaming, you put your empathy in the driver's seat and your boundaries in the trunk. But here's the truth. When someone intentionally causes harm, that's not an accident you can clean up. That's a choice they made with full awareness of its cost, and they chose it anyway. Let's clear something up, something many of us were never taught growing up. Boundaries are not cruel. They are not harsh. They are not a form of revenge. They are clarity. They are protection. And most importantly, they are self-respect in action. Somewhere along the way, many of us were conditioned to believe that saying no was mean, or that walking away from harmful relationships made us unforgiving or cold. We were told that keeping the peace was more important than honoring our pain, that we should be the bigger person, even when it meant shrinking ourselves to fit into a relationship that chipped away at our dignity. But here's the truth. A boundary is not a wall. It's a bridge that tells others how they can be in relationship with you in a way that's healthy, respectful, and safe. When someone has intentionally damaged you, choosing to no longer allow them access to your energy, your heart, or your life, that's not punishment. That's you drawing a sacred line and saying, I matter, my peace matters, my safety matters. That's not a declaration of war, it's a declaration of worth. You are not obligated to make room for people who've repeatedly shown you that they don't know how to care for your heart. You don't owe continued access to someone simply because they're sorry or because they're persistent. Sorry doesn't rebuild trust. Sorry doesn't undo intentional harm. Sorry doesn't grant automatic re-entry. Boundaries can feel uncomfortable at first, especially if you've spent years confusing people-pleasing with kindness. But every time you say, this is not okay, or I will not allow this behavior in my life again, you are reinforcing a deeper truth. You are no longer abandoning yourself to keep someone else comfortable. And maybe they'll call you harsh. Maybe they'll say you're overreacting. Maybe they'll try to twist your boundary into evidence that you are the problem. But listen closely, healthy people respect boundaries. Unsafe people are offended by them. So the next time you feel guilt creep in because you're drawing a line, remember this. You're not punishing them. You're protecting the version of you that finally realized she's worthy of more. And that's not selfish. That's sacred. Empathy is beautiful, it's powerful, it's one of the most courageous traits we can possess, the ability to step into someone else's shoes, to feel with them, to see the world through their pain. But let me say this clearly and without apology, empathy should never come at the cost of your own well-being. Too often we confuse empathy with obligation. We believe that because we understand someone, we have to excuse them. That if we can trace the roots of their behavior, childhood trauma, unhealed wounds, emotional immaturity, we are somehow required to remain available, compassionate, forgiving, even when their behavior is harming us. But here's the hard truth. You can understand why someone hurt you and still choose to walk away. You can say, I see your pain, but I will not let it bleed all over me. You can say, I have compassion for where you've been, but that doesn't mean I will allow you to trample over where I'm going. Empathy becomes dangerous when it turns into self-abandonment. When you silence your own needs in the name of being understanding, when you dismiss your hurt with they didn't mean to, even though they showed you they didn't care to stop, when you stay, not because it's healthy, but because you feel guilty for leaving someone who's clearly still broken. But here's what I want you to hear deep in your bones. You are not responsible for healing people who continue to harm you. Empathy is a bridge to connection, not a contract for self-sacrifice. You can feel for someone and still protect yourself. You can love someone and still say, not like this. You can hope the best for them and still say from a distance, empathy doesn't mean you have to invite them back in. It doesn't mean you have to absorb the consequences of their choice. It doesn't mean your heart has to keep stretching until it snaps. And if you were taught that loving someone means enduring their pain at your own expense, let me gently and firmly tell you, that's not empathy. That's erasure. Real empathy includes you too. It's not only about honoring someone else's story, it's about honoring your own voice, your own needs, and your own emotional safety. So keep your heart soft, stay compassionate, but never again confuse empathy with a permission slip to betray yourself. The kind that isn't tidy or tied up with a bow, or the kind that doesn't lead back to the same person who hurt you. Forgiveness is not a reunion. It is not a second chance. It is not an invitation to return to what broke you. Forgiveness is a process of release, not return. It's you choosing to put down the weight of resentment so it no longer poisons your peace. It's you saying, I will not allow your choices to have power over my nervous system, my future, or my voice any longer. That we've been sold a dangerous lie, that forgiveness is only real if it ends in reconciliation, that if you've truly let go, you should also let them back in. But here's the truth. Forgiveness happens in your heart. Reconciliation happens in a relationship. And those are two entirely different things. One can happen without the other. In fact, sometimes it must. Forgiveness is a solo act. It's deeply internal. It's for you, not them. It doesn't require an apology. It doesn't require their presence. It doesn't even require that they've changed. Because sometimes the people who hurt you will never take responsibility. Sometimes they will rewrite the story to cast themselves as the victim. Sometimes they'll expect you to move on without ever doing the work of repair. And in those cases, forgiveness is not saying it's okay. Forgiveness is saying it's over. You don't get to hold space in my mind anymore. Letting go does not mean forgetting. It means remembering without reliving. It means you can tell the story of what happened without trembling, without rage, without needing them to feel what you felt. And sometimes the most powerful act of forgiveness is simply this: closing the door, locking it, and walking away with your head high. Reconciliation, on the other hand, is a joint effort. It requires remorse, repair, accountability, and change. It requires both parties to show up, not just with words, but with new behaviors. Without those things, reconciliation isn't healing. It's self-abandonment dressed up in spiritual language. So let's stop telling people they haven't truly forgiven if they don't reconcile. Let's stop pressuring hearts to open up to those who haven't earned re-entry. Let's stop confusing grace with permission. You can forgive and never speak to them again. You can release the bitterness and still reinforce your boundaries. You can wish someone healing and still know they're not safe for you. Because forgiveness is not a bridge back to pain. It's the key that unlocks your own freedom. People show you who they are, believe them the first time. And we don't like to believe it. We don't want to believe it. Because if we did, we'd have to face truths we're not ready to hold. We'd have to admit that someone we care about isn't who we hope they would be. But here's the hard truth wrapped in compassion. People show you who they are, believe them the first time, not the version they post on social media, not the version they become when they're trying to win you back, not the version they promise to be someday, the version they are when no one is watching, The version that shows up when they're angry, when they're not getting what they want, when they're faced with your boundaries. That version is the truth. And when someone lies, manipulates, betrays, or mistreats you, intentionally believe that, not because you want to stay angry, but because clarity is a form of protection. Their actions are not mixed signals. You're just hoping for a different translation. We all have the tendency to rationalize toxic behavior when it comes from someone we love. We tell ourselves they're just hurting. And I didn't mean it. It was just a bad day. But patterns speak louder than isolated moments. If someone shows you repeatedly that your pain doesn't matter to them, that's not confusion, that's character. And I know it's hard. I know it's painful to let go of who you thought someone was. But clinging to potential is a trap. It keeps you in a holding pattern, emotionally suspended between who they really are and who you wish they would become. But love without truth is just a beautiful illusion. When someone shows you they are careless with your heart, believe them. When someone violates your trust and shows no genuine effort to rebuild it, believe them. When someone crosses boundaries and calls you sensitive for setting them, believe them. Because every time you ignore that first reveal, every time you explain it away or soften its edges, you betray yourself a little more. You are not here to rewrite someone else's story at the cost of your own peace. Believing someone the first time they show you their truth isn't harsh, it's wisdom. It saves you from pouring more energy into someone who already told you they wouldn't hold it with care. This is not about bitterness. It's not about judgment. It's about discernment. It's about choosing your peace over your pattern of rescuing people who are more invested in staying the same than in showing up differently. So the next time someone shows you who they are, when their words don't match their actions, when their behavior writes a story your heart doesn't want to read, pause, breathe, pay attention. Not everyone deserves a second look. Some people only need to show you once. You deserve to believe what you see the first time. Healing requires safety. Healing is not just about time. It's not just about journaling, therapy, or affirmations whispered into the mirror. Healing is about environment. And more than anything, healing requires one essential ingredient: safety. You cannot begin to heal in the same environment that hurt you. You cannot grow while you're still bracing for impact. You cannot learn to trust yourself again while someone is still actively making you question your reality. Healing requires peace, not performance. It needs stillness, not survival mode. It needs a space where your nervous system can exhale, where you're not constantly analyzing tone, reading between the lines, or preparing for the next emotional ambush. We like to believe that we can heal while staying connected to the people who broke us, that we can find our footing while still standing on cracked ground. But the truth is, healing cannot happen in chaos. It cannot happen in a relationship where you are constantly being re-injured. And let's name this because it matters. If someone intentionally damaged you and you are still in contact with them, still trying to work it out, still giving them access to the soft parts of your soul, your healing is not just stalled, it's under attack. There's a version of you, wiser, more grounded, more whole, on the other side of that pain, but you won't meet her until you remove yourself from the places and people that made her disappear in the first place. Safety isn't just about the absence of violence. It's about emotional security. It's about knowing you can speak without being mocked, be healed without being punished, say no without fearing abandonment, rest without guilt, laugh without tension. And here's what no one tells you. Sometimes you have to build that safety for yourself. Sometimes it means saying goodbye to someone you love. Sometimes it means drawing a boundary that feels like a wall but is actually a lifeline. Sometimes it means choosing loneliness over loyalty to dysfunction. And that is not weakness, that is wisdom. You are not meant to carry your healing into battlegrounds. You are not designed to bloom in places where your soul is being stepped on. You are allowed, encouraged to choose peace, even if it disappoints the person who hurt you, especially if it does, because your healing is not a negotiation. It's not something you earn by being agreeable. It's not something someone else gets to control. Healing begins when you choose you. When you say no more, when you create space for softness, silence, honesty, and breath. You don't have to be brave in the presence of danger. You have to be brave enough to walk away from it and into the safety you deserve. You are not unkind for refusing to reopen a door that someone intentionally slammed on your heart. Oh, you are not bitter for protecting yourself. You are not unforgiving for walking away from someone who had every chance to treat you with care and chose not to. You have every right to choose peace over chaos. You have every right to honor the pain you didn't deserve. And you have every right to protect the version of you that finally said, no more. This isn't about revenge. This isn't about being hard or heartless. This is about learning to recognize the difference between a person who made a human mistake and one who made a clear, conscious decision to harm you and never looked back. You don't need another apology. You don't need them to understand the damage. You don't even need closure from their side. You are the closure. Every boundary you hold, every second chance you refuse, every quiet decision to heal in peace, that is your closure. That is your healing. So if you've been waiting for a sign to stop giving your heart back to people who keep dropping it, this is it. You deserve love that doesn't require you to shrink, to beg, or to bleed quietly. You deserve safety. You deserve freedom. You don't owe anyone a second chance to hurt you the same way twice. And maybe the most radical, self-loving thing you can do is to believe them the first time, forgive for your peace, and never hand them the keys to your heart again. You are not wrong for closing the door. You are finally right where you need to be on your own side.